I stood outside my own home, the home I'd lived in for 43 years, staring at the new lock on the front door. My key wouldn't work anymore. My clothes and memories were inside, but my daughter had made it clear I wasn't welcome. What she didn't know was that I'd already signed the papers. I was the new owner she'd never met. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Harold Miller. I'm 72 years old, retired construction foreman with bad knees and a worse back. My wife Ellen passed away 7 years ago after 41 years of marriage. Since then, it's been just me and our 2-bedroom ranch-style house in Denver. The same house where we raised our only child, Caitlin. My daily routine is simple. I wake up at 5:30 a.m. Old habits die hard. I make coffee in the same pot Ellen and I received as a wedding gift. I read the newspaper, actual paper, not that digital nonsense, and watch the morning news. Most days, I visit the local diner for lunch, where I sit with other retirees, discussing everything from politics to the Broncos' chances this season. Afternoons, I tend to Ellen's garden or tinker in my workshop. Evenings, I watch Jeopardy and go to bed by 9 p.m. Not exactly thrilling, but it was my life. My comfortable, predictable life. I remember when Caitlin was born. Ellen and I had been married for 3 years, saving every penny for a house. I worked double shifts, sometimes sleeping in my truck between jobs. Ellen waitressed until her 8th month. When we finally brought Caitlin home, we had nothing but a second-hand crib and endless determination. I remember her first steps across this very living room floor. The countless nights I sat at the kitchen table, helping with homework after 10-hour workdays. The summer I taught her to drive in the high school parking lot, both of us terrified but laughing. I remember remortgaging the house to pay for her college when my construction company went through hard times. "Dad, why don't you ever buy yourself something nice?" she used to ask. I'd just shrug. "Got everything I need right here," I'd tell her. And I meant it. When Ellen got sick, Caitlin helped when she could, but she had her own life by then. A marketing career in Denver, a new husband named Jeremy, who worked in finance. They visited on holidays, called occasionally. I didn't complain. That's how it goes with kids. They grow up, move on. You just hope they remember where they came from. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening last month. "Dad, how are you holding up?" Her voice had that forced cheerfulness I'd grown to recognize. "Same as always, sweetheart. Just finished dinner and was about to watch the news. Are you eating enough? You know, you can always order groceries online now, right? I showed you the app." "I'm eating plenty," I said, not mentioning it was leftovers from 3 days ago. Though I had a little scare yesterday. Forgot to turn off the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it burning from the living room. There was a pause. I could picture her frowning in that way she'd inherited from her mother. "Dad, maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly." "I'm fine." "Caitlin, really? How's your business trip going? You're in Phoenix, right?" "Yes, the conference ends tomorrow." "Listen, Dad, I should probably get going. Jeremy and I have dinner plans with some potential investors." "Of course, sweetheart." "I love you. Love you too, Dad. Take care of yourself, okay?" I heard a click, then rustling sounds. She must have dropped the phone in her purse without hanging up. I was about to end the call when I heard voices. "Jeremy, you see how he's deteriorating." Caitlin's voice, no longer warm and caring. "He forgot to turn off the stove yesterday. What if he burns the house down?" "It's time for a nursing home, Caitlin." Jeremy's voice cold and matter-of-fact. "He's becoming a burden and you know it." "The house is worth almost $1 million now," Caitlin said, her tone calculated. "With Denver's market, we could probably get $900,000, maybe more." "Exactly," Jeremy sounded pleased. "We could sell it, put him somewhere decent, not too expensive, and finally buy that house in Boulder we've been looking at." My daughter laughed. Actually laughed. "God, Jeremy, you should have seen him tonight. So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea we're planning this." The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor Ellen and I had installed together 23 years ago. Every board laid by my own hands. I sat in the sudden silence of my empty house, staring at Ellen's photograph on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to bore into mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, warning. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Ellen's anniversary gift to me 15 years ago, ticked steadily in the growing darkness. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. My weathered hands slowly curled into fists. They thought I was confused, helpless, ready to be managed and discarded. They were already spending my money, already planning their new life, but I wasn't dead yet, and I wasn't nearly as confused as they believed. I picked up the phone again and made a call, not to my daughter, but to my old friend Todd Fisher, who happened to be the best real estate attorney in Denver. Todd Fisher's office smelled like old leather and coffee. I'd known him for years. He'd helped Ellen and me with our wills, property transfers, all the legal stuff normal folks like us rarely think about. "Frank, it's been a while," he said, extending his hand. "I was sorry to hear about Ellen." "Thank you," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. The leather creaked under my weight. "I need some advice, Todd, and I need it fast." I told him everything, the phone call, the overheard conversation, their plans to sell my house and put me in a nursing home. Todd's expression never changed, but I caught him shaking his head slightly when I described how Caitlin and Jeremy were already spending my money on their Boulder dream house. "Unfortunately, Mr. Miller, this scenario is more common than you'd think," Todd said, setting down his pen. "Adult children often assume they know what's best for their aging parents, especially when valuable assets are involved. But they can't actually do anything, can they? I mean, legally? Let's start with the basics. The house is titled in your name only since Ellen's passing, correct?" "That's right. Ellen and I owned it jointly, but when she died, it transferred to me automatically. Then, legally speaking, your daughter and son-in-law have absolutely no claim to your property. They cannot sell it, cannot force you into a care facility, cannot make any decisions about your assets without your explicit consent." Todd pulled a legal pad from his drawer and began making notes. "The house belongs to you, period." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by something sharper. "So if I wanted to sell it myself, you could put it on the market tomorrow if you chose to. It's your property, your decision." I thought about Caitlin's laugh when she'd called me a burden, about Jeremy's cold calculation of my worth, about 40 years of sacrifice reduced to a real estate transaction. They think I'm helpless, confused. They think they can manage me like a piece of property. My hands clenched around the coffee cup Todd had given me. Maybe it's time I showed them exactly how sharp my mind really is. Todd was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "Denver's housing market is incredibly strong right now, especially in your neighborhood. Properties are selling within days, often for cash offers above asking price." He paused. "If you were serious about selling quickly before your daughter and son-in-law return from their trip, how quickly could it happen? With the right buyer, and there are plenty of investors looking for properties like yours, we could have a sale completed within a week, maybe less." Todd leaned forward. "But Mr. Miller, this is a major decision. Once you sell, there's no going back. I built that house with my own hands, Mr. Fisher. Every board, every nail, every custom detail. I know exactly what I'm doing." We spent the next hour discussing practicalities, market value estimates, cash buyer networks, legal requirements. Todd explained that he could have everything prepared within 24 hours if I was serious about proceeding. "The consultation fee is $200, Todd said as I prepared to leave. "If you decide to move forward, that applies toward my legal fees for the sale." I paid in cash, feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. Walking to my truck in the spring sunshine, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Caitlin's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time since her betrayal, I smiled. I let it ring. Let her wonder why her grateful old father wasn't jumping to answer her call. The next morning, I called Todd. "I want to sell the house, but there's something else I want to do." "What's that, Harold?" "I want to be the buyer." Silence on the other end. Then Todd chuckled. "Well, that's certainly creative, but why would you sell your house to yourself?" "Not to myself directly. I've been thinking all night. I want to create an LLC, a company that buys the house. I'll own the company, but on paper, the house will belong to Mountain View Properties or something. Caitlin will never know it's me. I see, Todd said slowly. And what would this accomplish exactly? When they come back from their trip, they'll find out the house has been sold. They'll think I'm penniless, with nowhere to go. That's when I'll see what they're really made of. Todd was quiet for a long moment. Harold, this is unconventional, but legal, assuming everything is properly documented. Let me ask you something. What's the end game here? What do you hope to achieve? I hadn't slept all night thinking about this. I want to know if they'll still want me when they think I have nothing left to give. That afternoon, I met with a realtor Todd recommended. Sandra Jenkins specialized in quick sales. This is a beautiful home, Mr. Miller, she said, walking through my living room. In this neighborhood, with these original hardwood floors and the mountain view, we could easily list at $925,000. Might even start a bidding war. I don't want a bidding war, I said. I want a fast, quiet sale. Drinking 90,000 cash as is. Sandra raised an eyebrow. That's leaving money on the table. I know what I'm doing. 3 days later, I signed the papers selling my house to Mountain View Properties LLC, a company that existed only on paper, with me as the sole owner. Todd had moved at remarkable speed, setting up the company, preparing the paperwork, arranging for the funds to move from my savings account through an escrow service and back into a new account for the LLC. Congratulations, Todd said as I signed the final document. You've just sold your house to yourself. I felt a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction at outsmarting Caitlin and Jeremy, but also deep sadness that it had come to this. That evening, Caitlin called again. This time I answered, "Dad! I've been trying to reach you for days. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Just been busy." "Busy? Doing what?" "Oh, you know, this and that." "How was Phoenix?" "It was fine. Dad, you can't just disappear for days. I was worried sick." "Was she? Or was she worried about her investment?" "I'm sorry to have worried you. When are you coming back to Denver?" "We fly back tomorrow." "Jeremy has some meetings, but I thought maybe I'd stop by in the afternoon." "Around 3? That would be nice," I said. "I'll see you then." After hanging up, I spent the night packing. Not everything, just enough personal items to make it look like I'd left in a hurry. Clothes, toiletries, Ellen's photo, and a few keepsakes went into 2 suitcases. The rest I left exactly where it was. The next day I met with a locksmith who changed all the locks on the house. I handed the new keys to Todd, who would pass them to Caitlin as the representative of the new owner. At 2:30 p.m., I parked my truck down the street with a clear view of the house and waited. At precisely 3:05, Caitlin's silver BMW pulled into the driveway. I watched through binoculars as she approached the front door, tried her key, then tried again with growing confusion. She pulled out her phone, probably calling me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't answer. After several attempts, she knocked on the door. No answer, of course. She walked around to the back, tried the patio door, peered through windows. Her movements became more frantic. She made more calls. To me, probably to Jeremy. Finally, she sat on the front step, head in her hands. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Around 4:30, Jeremy's black Tesla pulled in beside her BMW. They had an animated conversation, gesturing toward the house. Jeremy tried his own key, then pounded on the door. That's when Todd's car appeared. Perfect timing, exactly as we'd planned. I watched him approach them, introduce himself, hand them an envelope. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see their faces. Shock, disbelief, then anger. Caitlin seemed to crumple, leaning against Jeremy, who was reading the document with growing agitation. Todd pointed to various parts of the paper, presumably explaining that the house had been legally sold, that they had 48 hours to remove any personal belongings, that the new owner had generously offered this courtesy period. Jeremy was shouting now, pointing at the house, gesturing wildly. Todd remained calm, handing him a business card, my new cell phone number, though they wouldn't know it was me. Todd returned to his car and drove away, leaving them standing in front of what was no longer their family home. They stayed for almost an hour, Caitlin alternately crying and making phone calls, Jeremy pacing and arguing with someone on his phone. Finally, they used the temporary key Todd had given them and entered the house. I started my truck and drove to my new apartment, a modest one-bedroom I'd rented the day before, paid 3 months in advance. As I unpacked Ellen's photo and set it on the nightstand, my phone rang with Caitlin's number. I didn't answer. Not yet. The next morning, my phone showed 17 missed calls, 12 from Caitlin, 5 from Jeremy. There were voicemails too, which I listened to one by one. Dad, where are you? Something terrible has happened. Please call me immediately. Dad, it's an emergency. The house has been sold. I don't understand what's happening.
Call me back!
Harold, this is Jeremy. We need to speak with you right away about the house situation. There must be some misunderstanding. And the last one from Caitlin, her voice ragged with tears. Daddy, please. I'm scared. We can't find you. The house is gone. Where are you staying? Are you okay? Please call me back. I felt a twinge of guilt, but then remembered her laugh. He's a burden, she'd said. He has no idea we're planning this. At 10 a.m., I called Todd. Have they contacted you again? Multiple times, he said. They're demanding to know who bought the house and where you are. I've explained that I'm bound by confidentiality regarding the buyer and that I don't know your whereabouts. Good. What's happening at the house? They've been packing up some things. They seem distressed, especially your daughter. Let them stew a little longer, I said. Around noon, I received a text from an unknown number. Mr. Miller, this is Todd's assistant. The new owners of your former property would like to speak with you about purchasing some of the furniture. Please call this number if interested. This was our code. Todd had set up a burner phone that would forward calls to me without revealing my number. It was time for the next phase. I called the number. Hello. Caitlin's voice thick with tears. This is Harold Miller. I understand you wanted to speak with me? Dad, oh my God, Dad. Where are you? What's happening? The house has been sold, I finished for her. Yes, I'm aware, but why? How? Where are you staying? Are you okay? I'm fine, Caitlin. I'm staying somewhere safe. But Dad, all your things, our family photos, Mom's china, everything is still here. I took what matters to me, I said coldly. You can keep the rest or throw it away. It doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter. Dad, what's going on? Why would you sell the house without telling us? We could have helped you. Helped me? I laughed, a harsh sound I barely recognized. The way you were planning to help me into a nursing home while you bought a house in Boulder with my money. Silence. Then what are you talking about? You forgot to hang up your phone in Phoenix, Caitlin. I heard everything. You and Jeremy planning to sell my house, and put me somewhere decent, not too expensive. I heard you laugh about how grateful I was, how I had no idea what you were planning. Her gasp was audible. Maybe. Dad, no, you misunderstood. I understood perfectly. So I decided to take control of my own life before you could do it for me. But where will you live? What will you do for money? Her voice rose in panic. Dad, you need us. Do I? Or do you need my house and my money? That's not fair. We were worried about you. The stove incident, your forgetfulness. I'm not as confused as you think, Caitlin. Clear-headed enough to sell my house in 4 days anyway. I heard muffled voices, Caitlin and Jeremy consulting. Then Jeremy came on the line. Harold, this is insane. You need to tell us where you are. We're worried sick. Are you worried about me, Jeremy, or about the house in Boulder you won't be buying with my money? Another silence. Look, Harold, I think we all need to calm down and talk this through. Why don't we meet somewhere? We can help you figure this out. Figure what out? It's done. The house is sold. The money is secure. What does that mean? Where is the money, Harold? And there it was, the real concern. Not my welfare, but my wallet. That's no longer your concern, Jeremy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment. Wait. Dad! Caitlin was back on the line. Please at least tell me you're safe. Where are you staying? You can stay with us until we figure this out. For a moment, I almost weakened. She sounded so much like the little girl who used to run to me when she skinned her knee. But then I remembered her calculated tone when discussing my worth. "I'll be in touch when I'm ready. Caitlin, goodbye." I hung up and sat in the silence of my new apartment, staring at Ellen's photograph. "Well, Ellen," I whispered, "what do you think of our daughter now?" The phone rang again immediately. And again, and again. I turned it off. Later that evening, I drove back to the house and parked across the street. Lights blazed from every window. Through the living room window, I could see Caitlin and Jeremy moving around, gesturing, arguing. Caitlin was crying. Jeremy seemed to be shouting into his phone. A cruel part of me enjoyed seeing their panic. A father's part of me ached at my daughter's tears. But I hardened my heart. This was a lesson they needed to learn. As I watched, another car pulled into the driveway. Jeremy's parents, the Kaplans. I hadn't expected that. They hurried inside, and soon all four of them were visible through the window, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. I waited until nearly midnight. Finally, the Kaplans left. Shortly after, the lights in the house went out, except for the kitchen, where Caitlin sat alone at the table, her head in her hands. I drove back to my apartment, my resolve wavering. Was I being too harsh, too cruel, or was this exactly what they deserved? The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find 37 missed calls and dozens of texts. Most were from Caitlin, growing increasingly desperate. "Dad, please call me. Dad, we're filing a missing persons report if we don't hear from you today. Please, just let me know you're safe. I'm sorry for whatever you think you heard. We can talk about this. Where are you getting money for food? For medicine? Dad, I'm terrified. The last text caught my attention. The new owners want us out by tomorrow. We have nowhere to put your things. Please tell us what to do." It was time for the final act. I called Todd. "It's time," I said. "Let's arrange the meeting." Todd agreed to contact Caitlin and Jeremy as the representative of Mountain View Properties. He would tell them the new owner was willing to meet with them to discuss arrangements for the remaining household items and possibly to hear any concerns they might have about Harold Miller's situation. The meeting was set for the following day at Todd's office. I arrived early, wearing a suit I hadn't worn in years, the charcoal gray one Ellen had picked out for me to wear to her funeral. I waited in Todd's private office while he brought them in. Through the crack in the door, I could see them enter the conference room. Caitlin looked terrible, red-eyed, hair unwashed. Jeremy looked angry and defensive. They sat at the conference table, tense and expectant. "Thank you for coming," Todd began. "The new owner of the property has agreed to meet with you to discuss the situation." "We don't care about the property right now," Caitlin said, her voice ragged. "We just want to find my father." "I understand," Todd said. "And that's part of why the owner wanted to meet with you personally." Todd opened the connecting door, and I walked in. The look on their faces, I'll remember it until the day I die. Shock, confusion. And then, as understanding dawned, horror. "Dad," Caitlin whispered. "Hello, Caitlin. Jeremy." I sat down across from them. "I believe you wanted to meet the new owner of the house." The color drained from Caitlin's face. She gripped the edge of the conference table, staring at me like I was a ghost. "You," she whispered. "You're the buyer?" Jeremy recovered faster. "This is ridiculous," he spat. "What kind of sick game are you playing, Harold?" I sat down across from them, folding my hands on the table. "No game, Jeremy. Just a lesson in consequences." Caitlin's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "I think you understand perfectly," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You thought I was confused, helpless. A burden to be managed and discarded. So I decided to show you exactly how sharp my mind still is." "That conversation, you misunderstood," Caitlin pleaded. "We were just worried about you." "The stove incident—" "Stop lying," I cut her off. "I heard you laugh, Caitlin. I heard you say how grateful I was, how I had no idea what you were planning. I heard Jeremy talking about buying your Boulder dream house with my money." Jeremy leaned forward, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "Look, Harold, what you did is elder abuse in reverse. You sold your own house out from under yourself to what? Teach us a lesson. You need help." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "Elder abuse? That's rich coming from someone who was planning to warehouse me in a nursing home while spending my money. We were looking out for your best interests, Jeremy insisted. My best interests? I pulled a small recorder from my pocket and placed it on the table. Let's review what those best interests sounded like. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room. It's time for a nursing home, Caitlin. He's becoming a burden, and you know it. The house is worth almost $1 million now. With Denver's market, we could probably get $900,000, maybe more. We could sell it, put him somewhere decent, not too expensive, and finally buy that house in Boulder we've been looking at. Caitlin's laugh. God, Jeremy, you should have seen him tonight. So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea we're planning this. I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Dad, Caitlin whispered, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean you meant every word, I said quietly. And now you're sorry because you've been caught. Todd cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the practical matters at hand. The house has been legally sold to Mountain View Properties, LLC. Mr. Miller is the sole owner of that company, which makes him effectively the owner of the house. Jeremy's face twisted with rage. This is insane. You can't just... I can and I did, I interrupted. The house is mine. Always was, always will be. But now you know exactly where you stand with me. Where does that leave us? Caitlin asked, tears streaming down her face. That's up to you, I said. I didn't do this to punish you, though God knows you deserve it. I did it to find out who you really are. I stood up. I'll be staying at my apartment for the next month. You two can stay in the house until then, rent-free. Consider it a grace period to figure out your next steps. And after that, Jeremy asked, after that you'll need to find your own place. The house won't be available. What about our relationship, Dad? Caitlin's voice was small, broken. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Beyond the tears and the panic, I tried to see the little girl who used to run to me with skinned knees. The teenager who rolled her eyes at my dad jokes. The young woman I'd walk down the aisle. That's also up to you, I said. But it starts with honesty. No more planning behind my back. No more treating me like I'm already gone. I nodded to Todd and walked out, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. For the next 3 weeks, I barely heard from them. One text from Caitlin, we're looking for a place. We'll be out by the deadline. Nothing more. I spent those weeks settling into my small apartment, making friends with other retirees in the building, even joining their weekly poker game. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it wasn't terrible either. Then one rainy Tuesday, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Caitlin standing there alone, soaking wet, no umbrella. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, looking around at my modest apartment. It's nice, she said, but I could see the pity in her eyes. This wasn't where she thought her father should be living. Coffee, I offered. She nodded. We sat at my small kitchen table, steam rising between us from the mugs. Jeremy's gone, she said finally. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. After what happened, after we realized what we'd done, things fell apart between us. She stared into her coffee. He blamed me for not hanging up the phone properly. I blamed him for pushing the nursing home idea. The truth is, we were both wrong. Where is he now? Staying with a friend while he looks for his own place. She looked up at me. Dad, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About what I heard myself say on that recording. About the kind of person I've become. I waited, letting her find her words. I don't recognize that person, she continued. That cold, calculating woman planning to put her father away. That's not who I wanted to be. Who did you want to be? I asked quietly, tears welled up again. Someone you could be proud of. Someone Mom would be proud of. She wiped her eyes. I got so caught up in my career, in Jeremy's ambitions. We were always reaching for the next thing, the bigger house, the better car. Somehow along the way I started seeing you as a means to an end. I finished for her. She nodded, ashamed. I'm so sorry, Dad. I know those words don't mean much after what I did, but I am truly, deeply sorry. I sipped my coffee, considering her words. Part of me wanted to forgive her immediately, to gather my little girl in my arms and tell her everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had heard her laugh at my expense, held back. What do you want now, Caitlin? She looked surprised by the question. I want to try to make things right. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to be better, to be the daughter you deserve, and practically speaking, where will you go when the month is up? I found a small condo to rent. It's nothing fancy, but it's close to my office. I can afford it on my own. She hesitated. Jeremy wanted me to ask you for money for a down payment on a house, but I told him no. That's not why I'm here. Something in my chest loosened slightly at that. Dad, I understand if you can't forgive me yet, or ever, but I want you to know that I see what I did now. I see how I betrayed you, and I hate myself for it. I reached across the table and took her hand. Don't hate yourself, Caitlin. Learn from this. We talked for hours that night. Really talked, in a way we hadn't since Ellen died. She told me about her failing marriage, her doubts about her career path, her grief over losing her mother that she'd never properly processed. I told her about my loneliness, my fears about aging, my own grief that I'd buried in routines and silence. When she finally left, the rain had stopped. We stood awkwardly at the door. Can I visit again? She asked tentatively. I'd like that, I said. 2 days later, she texted me a photo of her new apartment keys. All mine, the caption read. No help needed. The month ended. I moved back into my house. Our house, the one Ellen and I had built together. It felt different now. Emptier in some ways, but also lighter, as if a heaviness had lifted. Caitlin visited every Sunday for dinner. At first, our conversations were careful, measured. But gradually, we found our way back to something resembling trust. Not the blind trust I'd had before, but something more mature, more honest. 3 months after I'd moved back home, she brought up the house. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest, I nodded. Wary, are you really okay living here alone? Not because I think you can't handle it, she added quickly, but because I worry about you being lonely. I considered her question. The truth was, the house did feel too big sometimes, too full of echoes and memories. I'm managing, I said. But I won't pretend it's always easy. She took a deep breath. I have an idea, but I want you to feel free to say no. Go on. What if we sold this house, for real this time, and bought something smaller? 2 separate units in the same building, maybe. You'd have your independence, but I'd be close by if you needed anything. I studied her face, looking for signs of the old calculation, the old scheme. But all I saw was genuine concern. You'd move out of your condo. She nodded. It's just a rental. And honestly, Dad, I miss having family nearby. After everything that's happened with Jeremy, I've realized how important that is. I thought about her proposal. It wasn't a bad idea, actually. The house was too big for me now, and the maintenance was becoming a burden. And though I'd never admit it aloud, I did get lonely. Let me think about it, I said. A week later, I called her. I've been looking at those new duplex developments near Washington Park. 2 separate houses, shared courtyard in between. What do you think? Her smile through the phone was audible. I think that sounds perfect, Dad. 6 months after I'd sold my house to myself, I sold it again. This time for real. The market had gone up even further, and we got $945,000. I bought one side of a new duplex for $425,000 cash. Caitlin got a mortgage for the other side. On moving day, as the last boxes were being unloaded, we sat in the shared courtyard garden between our 2 homes. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the new flower beds we'd planted together. Dad, Caitlin said, handing me a cold beer, I need to tell you something. What's that? I'm grateful for what you did, selling the house, I mean. Not because it worked out well for me in the end, but because it made me look at myself. Really look, I nodded, taking a sip of my beer. You could have just confronted us, told us you'd overheard everything. But instead you showed me who I was becoming. It was like looking in a mirror I couldn't turn away from. She reached over and squeezed my hand. It was the hardest lesson I've ever learned, but I needed it. We all need hard lessons sometimes, I said. The important thing is that we learn from them. She raised her bottle. To new beginnings. I clinked my bottle against hers. And to old houses, I added. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set. From my new patio, I could see into my new living room, where Ellen's photograph sat on the mantel, watching over both of us. Later that night, after Caitlin had gone to her side of the duplex, I sat on my porch with a cup of decaf coffee, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us here. I'd sold my house to teach my daughter a lesson, but in the end, I'd learned one too. About forgiveness, about second chances, about the messy, complicated business of loving your family, even when they hurt you. I'd also learned something about myself, that I wasn't ready to be written off yet, that I still had fight in me, still had worth beyond my assets and my house. As I headed inside for the night, I glanced over at Caitlin's windows, still lit as she unpacked boxes. She waved when she saw me looking, and I waved back. We were both where we belonged, close enough to help each other, but with clear boundaries between us. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And after everything we'd been through, honesty felt like the most valuable currency of all. You know, they say, the house doesn't make the home. But sometimes it takes losing your house or selling it to yourself to find out what home really means. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and let us know in the comments how you'd rate this story from 0 to 10. Your support means everything to us.